Welcome to Frankly Speaking. My name is Nkgopotse JJ Tawani. Tonight we are not live, and this is the second part of a debate we started last week in commemoration of June 16, the debate amongst the leaders of the Youth League, the ANC Youth League, the Democratic Alliance Youth League, as well as the EFF Student Command. The leaders were really engaging on matters of education. Last week we ended on a note where they were debating why you should bother to vote for their particular political parties. If you've missed that particular segment, you can of course go to SABC News Online and you should be able to follow it there so you can make sense of tonight's conversation. We continue with that conversation tonight, and I'm going to be asking the leaders. Welcome back again, leaders.
Thank you very much.
Let's start with the Democratic Alliance. The state of basic education. We've had lots of stories about collapsing infrastructure, schools under trees, now children drowning in latrines, you name it. Is the youth of the DA doing something about the state of education, particularly basic education in South Africa? What can you tell me?
I think our basic education is definitely at a chronic place in society where our schools are falling apart, where our children are not safe. And the story of Michael Komape reminds us every day of a young little boy who died in a pit toilet because there was no infrastructure, there was no sanitation. So indeed, these issues are something that we are looking at as the DA Youth. And in fact, in the province of Gauteng, we are driving a safer schools petition where we are speaking to government to say we need to make sure that our schools are safe for our children. Because if our children are not safe at school, where then must they improve their lives? Where then must they educate themselves to be able to one day deliver and give their family support?
Are you satisfied with the level of activism that you are driving? Because you know this matter comes up when a second child is drowned and so on, but are young people like yourselves really conducting what we can call impactful campaigns that you could compare to 76 where issues of basic education are concerned?
I think society must be concerned. It's not an issue that is only affecting young people. These are kids that have parents who find themselves every day at risk. So I think it's a societal issue that we must deal with together as a society, not as political parties, because it's not a political conversation. It's a conversation related to the realities of people.
Why do you
the reason that I say it's not a political conversation is because politics is what corrodes the ideas and corrodes the way in which we want to help our people. If we want to say that basic education and the state of basic education is in trouble, then we must come together to say how do we, in the different spaces that we find ourselves, whether it is in government, civil society, NGOs, come together to say we have a crisis, we must deal with it.
All right. Sizopila, do you agree with that?
You know, previously when we were speaking about young people taking over, and part of our problems is that, and we are going to frankly say this, that the leadership of government has not been doing justice, because you keep on putting a same person that oversee all these problems that are happening in basic education. The infrastructure is collapsing, the safety of learners in high schools. I'm talking about the minister. She has not been assisting the society, has not been assisting the learners for years. The issue of safe learning, it has not been happening under her watch, and nothing has been done to say that
you're not been campaigning for her removal. I haven't heard you even proposing who could take over.
Perhaps it's the way that we have been doing it, because the way, the manner, the approach in which we have taken to do things is not to be pompous and take things in a manner that would at the end.
The scenes.
We are lobbying the ANC to say, but also this one is not assisting us. Why don't you put, for instance, a person that has been, you have a lot of people that are experienced, a lot of people that have led in their respective provinces in the basic education. Why do you not utilize those people and put them as ministers of basic education? Because these are the problems that we are going to keep on crying about if you don't change leadership, because it just can't happen that you're going to fix the problem without rooting what is a root cause of this.
Same question I was asking earlier. Are you though satisfied that the level of activism hasn't declined, right? In a sense that you know, some of these campaigns, like you are saying now, is behind the scenes and so on. We don't know what's going to happen. People continue to lament. Just last week, there was this whole issue again about children still drowning in latrines. The same department is going to court to contest that family mustn't be compensated, etc. I mean, it's a mess.
You know, the Department of Basic Education is just in tatters. It's in ICU. You either switch off the machines or put a new person that is going to assist us in moving forward. I mean, you cannot always, every year, every week, cry about the same issues. You see the problems, but you are not doing anything to assist the situation, and mostly to assist what we call the future, because those learners in those primary schools there, in those high schools there, are what we call the future of South Africa. But if they drown in pit holes, then how do they become?
Peter, what would the EFF do differently on issues of basic education?
Listen, I think it's much clearer now that we don't need to even criticize the ruling party. Their own people are admitting the failures of their own government, right? And, you know, it's not only NG's problem, right? It is the collective's problem. When you are a leader, leading society, you ought to understand that all organs are well functioning so that the entire organization can work, right? So NG has been there. She's been the president of the Women's League, right? She should understand what is really needed on the ground. Remember, the basic education is one of the most important sectors of education.
What to do differently if
this is what is going to happen under the government of the EFF. Number one,
on basic education.
On the basic, number one, we are aware as the EFF that if you really want a thorough decolonial education, it should start there, right? So there's this saying that if you want to precondition the mind of someone, it is from birth to 12. So if you don't, that's why obviously there is a level of, lack of political consciousness. You know, young people of today, they are only interested in, entertainment, bashes. That is the only thing they are taught in school. There is no matter.
What would the EFF government
this is what the
on
EFF
education
does, right? The EFF government seeks to change the entire curriculum. Number one, before we speak about safety, obviously there are issues. It's not only basic education where all these crises are, your health is collapsing. But we are also more interested with the quality that we must produce from the basic education. Because if we get it right there will be no need for us to panic in the institutions of higher learning and all that. Because the basic education is well structured and it can produce learners or prospect students that can really
quick response to that. Does it make sense what he wants to do with the education?
I think we have a danger if we only conceptualize basic education through the curriculum alone. Here we are talking about children who are dying at schools. We're talking about Michael Komape is not the first child, and he won't be the last child to drown in a pit toilet full of who knows what. So what I'm trying to say to you is that we must conceptualize these problems outside, not only on the space of the curriculum. How is a curriculum going to help someone who is drowning from a pit toilet?
Well,
how is it going to do it?
But you're not saying it's either or, isn't it?
What I'm trying to say is that young people are speaking to us, but we are not listening.
Yeah.
When there are protests on the ground, who do we think is marching there? It's young people. Young people are the ones who are communicating directly with government, but we choose not to listen.
But
so the activism of education is happening on the ground.
Sizopila, briefly before we go to the break.
The basic education, I'd agree with the curriculum having to change.
Yes.
But also, you need to address the matters that are agent matters. Your infrastructure is a problem. Learners are under the trees, and when it rains, it means you need to start with agent matters. Now, it shows that a level of thinking can't just reach the ceiling on level 1. You need to look at what is the agent thing. What is the agency? How agent are the matters? You need to clarify. You need to clarify. You need to clarify yourself. You need to clarify yourself on what are you going to do if young people who are studying under the trees. You need to clarify.
There's no government that
you
will
can't
allow
just jump to the curriculum when children are dying.
I've got to take a break now.
That is a given.
And
the government
it's not given.
schools.
It's not given.
During the break, I want you guys to discuss amongst yourselves.
We can't be saying we're going to
how we can pull together young people.
Books on time. That is our duty.
Wait. You're on Frankly Speaking. We're coming to you from Studio 12 today. We're not live tonight, and we are having a debate, a heated debate between the leaders of the EFF and the ANC about the future of South Africa. Stay tuned.
uyabona abantu abathi ngelinye ilanga ngingaphuma mina ngishiyo ANC ngenzeli enye iqembu kusho ukuthi abakangazi kahle.
I'm going to start with the so-called Revolutionary Council and deal with them legally.
We hold Hamas responsible for all acts of aggression from the Gaza Strip towards Israel.
I think he's been treated very, very unfairly by the media, as I call it, the fake media in many cases.
We know that if the evidence is presented properly, that a conviction at the end of the day could possibly follow.
I don't care what it was.
What are you trying to achieve?
This is neither procedure.
That's your problem. You are even replying instead of making a ruling. You are just descending into the arena.
Take your seat, honorable member.
That's all you know.
Welcome back to Frankly Speaking. We're talking to the leaders of the DA, the ANC and the Youth League tonight about the future of South Africa. One of the big debates that have occupied the public spaces this year in particular has been the issue of land. Let me start with the ANC Youth League. Did you have anything to do, right, with the resolution being passed at Nasrec about expropriation of land without compensation, given that the ANC in Parliament had voted against that resolution for the longest time?
The matter of land expropriation without compensation, you can take it back from even the Freedom Charter. It has been an issue that has been going on in the ANC Youth League from its conferences. It has been, even in the last conference in 2015, has been talking about the issue of land expropriation without compensation. And amongst other things that we speak about is that you need a new generation of new farmers, because as it stands, the farmers that are there are dominantly my friend's friend here, that are in a farming space, and not young people, black in particular, that are in a farming space. Another thing is that how we do it is that the government must expropriate land without compensation, be kept in the state, and then be given to the people based on the need. Because amongst other issues is the issue that young people are not able, in fact, not only young people, generally are not able to buy houses because they can't afford bonds. They do not have land either way to build. I mean, young people are faced with a matter of having to pay rent, which amounts to
Sorry, if I may cut in there, is the Youth League satisfied emerging out of the land summit that the ANC held about two weeks ago? When
you know, as the ANC,
are you satisfied that summit, right, is taking the land issue forward, or there's a little bit of dilly-dallying of saying, let's use the section 25?
As the ANC Youth League, we do not want any more talk shows about the land, because the resolution is there. Go and implement. That is the only thing that must happen. That the resolution is there, go and implement land expropriation.
So you are happy with what came out of that workshop?
We are not necessarily happy about what came of that workshop. The only thing, by the way, that we're happy about, that our former deputy president was able to be given a task of taking a lead to make sure that this is implemented. And we do not want, by 2019, when we go to elections, this thing has not been implemented. It must be implemented as soon as possible.
Let's go to the EFF. EFF, you went to Parliament, you knew, right, when you did that the ANC had already adopted the resolution about land expropriation without compensation. What motivated you to then almost jump the gun, go to Parliament and get them to support the resolution that was not brought by them as the ruling party? What is your view there?
It was not jumping. Remember, it was not even the first motion on land expropriation without compensation that day.
This looked like in a hurry, like February, even before the state of election.
We have always put, even tomorrow we can do it, because we know they are bluffing, right? Their president
Why do you say they are bluffing?
Listen, their president goes and address white farmers. You know, the
all presidents have done that.
So
all presidents
it's
have
fine.
done that.
Listen to what he says. He assures those white chaps that the constitution is not
changed.
Won't be changed. And how do you expect to expropriate land without compensation, without changing the constitution, without amending the constitution? It's not doable, right?
So you think that's why you're saying they're bluffing, that in fact they won't change the constitution?
Indeed, it is just the reaction of the voters.
But there's a process in Parliament, right?
Listen, you see, now we can't, you can't speak of process, my leader. We have identified the problem, we know what must be done.
So you don't have process?
Like this summit thing where you go to communities and ask people, what must we do? What do you feel about the land? People need the land, you know, it's a fact. For you to resolve the question of unemployment, you ought to take the land back so that the land can produce work on itself.
So practically, in your view, briefly, if the EFF has its way, you must pass a law that says nobody owns land anymore, the state owns all the land.
The state must be the custodian of the land, yes.
That's all you are looking for.
All the land must belong to the state.
What are you going to do if that is not passed in the parliamentary process that's underway?
Well, that is why we are going to the ground to lobby and mobilize people to vote for the EFF government, because that is the only shortest route that we are going to get the land back.
The DA, what is your the summary of your approach to the land issue? You are opposed to the resolution that the EFF and the ANC has put through Parliament. If somebody is listening, they want to know whether the DA wants to give them land or not. Summarize it for me, how young people in the DA see the land question and how it should be resolved.
I think there's a number of approaches that the DA has put forward. The first one is that we need to cut transfer costs, because when you buy a property in this market that we find ourselves in the property market, the transfer costs are so exorbitant that you are even unable to buy that property. So in order to empower people, you need to ensure that those transfer costs are cut so that people are able to get ownership of property. Secondly, we must give people title deeds, because when you give people title deeds, you give them dignity to own their own home, and that asset becomes a transferable asset that they can give back to their family.
Expropriation, you don't want it without compensation.
Again, here, when you look at Section 25 of the Constitution, have we properly tested that section in terms of compensation?
It has been
so the point that I'm making is this: is that section does allow for adequate expropriation of land.
So essentially, you are saying that you must not touch the land, right? That's not owned by the state, because the Section 25 will look obviously at areas.
What we're saying is that we don't
owned by the government. So your farmers, let's talk straight about your farmers. A farmer has maybe 30 hectares of land, so only use 1 hectare, right? You are saying leave them alone with their property, give them their title, don't touch them.
To be part of us on this one.
Is that how you want to approach
what
this?
I'm saying is that when you conceptualize and you go into the details, if you look at KZN, for example, 74% of land in KZN is owned by black people. So the question is, when the EFF says that they want the state to be the owner of land in South Africa, can we trust the state after state entities have collapsed time and time again? ESCOM, SAA. We cannot trust the state. We cannot trust the state.
You want to be trusted.
It's not immaterial. It's not immaterial.
You want to be trusted while you're in the pockets of the white
The point here is that the state continues to fail to deliver services with the entities
so you
that
can't trust them with land. Is that their bottom line?
I'm saying that when we speak about land, we must understand that land belongs to the people, and the people must own their land. And that is in line with the restitution reform plan of the DA.
Okay. After the break, I wanted to deal with the practicalities of it, right? The DA, I want you to answer for me how you deal with the issue of redress, if you are approaching it this way. And the EFF, you need to talk to me about how the social cohesion issue will be achieved by just grabbing all the land and centralizing it. But that's after the break. Well, on Frankly Speaking, the leaders of the DA, ANC and Youth League are slogging it out here on Frankly Speaking tonight about the future of South Africa. And we're doing this in commemoration of the heroic deeds of the youth of June 76. Let's take a break.
SABC News celebrates Youth Month.
And shut up, you stay lazy and listen.
The Honourable President told me to shut up.
It's up to the leadership of the DA, whether we continue to fight like they're doing now, or we put the people of the city of Cape Town first.
It has been deeply disappointing in some ways that Mayor Dillon has not displayed a similar regard for the best interests of the party.
You must go, Chief. You call me a dog here.
I also want to take this opportunity to thank the African National Congress for the deployment and for the ANC to agree that one must go on early retirement.
Booyah, Ma, come back and leave after giving us a signal.
Welcome back to Frankly Speaking. We're not live tonight, but we're having a debate with the youth leaders of our country about the future of South Africa and the big issue, the land issue. That's what we are focusing on the remaining time in this segment. From the EFF point of view, have you considered the what I can call the social cohesion implications, right, of the state simply owning all the land and then nobody else owning it, and then it can give it to whoever it wishes according to need and so on? How do you think that can affect, for example, we just mentioned that the president addressed the Afrikaners. It's precisely because they are the ones in a big panic with huge tracts of agricultural land that they use. The ANC making a point, even amending your resolution to say whatever we do, it mustn't affect, right, food security, for example. Your comment?
Well, look, JJ, we are going to take the land, and I think the question we must answer is that how many people within the population are in need of this land, right? You are going to find that majority of South African population want the expropriation of land without compensation because they are landless. Majority of South Africans here, black South Africans, are landless. So there will be no fuss after us expropriating the land because we will be having 80% support of black people who wanted the land.
We don't know that because that can be tested only at the polls.
Well, of course, that will be tested. I'm just showing you the outcomes. If we take it, how will be the response on the ground? People will support it because they need it. It will only be those 2% population of white Africa.
But you campaigned on that ticket, isn't it? As part of your pillars when you went to the last elections, and you only got about 7%. Well, are you saying that has changed in that if we get to a referendum now on the area of expropriation, you think that you will come up tops?
We are still saying expropriation of land without compensation. We said it in 2014, we will continue saying it. Even if we don't win elections in 2019, we are going to come back again and tell them that we need to take the land without compensation. We are going to do it until our people understand the imperative of why we should take the land.
Sizopila, it looks like the ANC is oscillating somewhere between what the DA is saying and what the EFF is saying. In the first place, you've agreed to the EFF resolution about expropriation, but you seem to agree with the DA that the constitution mustn't be changed. Where is the ANC standing?
It's not necessarily that the constitution must be changed, but you'd understand that part of the things that you need to change a constitution is that you need to have a 2/3 majority, of which, as it stands right now, as the ANC, we don't have.
But we have offered them our percentages.
And the ANC is saying that let's expropriate the land without compensation. Amongst other things, JJ, is to address the issue of the generation of farmers, because mostly you are having men that are dominating the farming sector. It's only black, old, mostly white men. So we want to bring in a change to say you have females that own the land, you have females that are able to do farming as opposed to what you're having right now, because what you're having right now is a status quo that has always been there.
The problem is this thing. Now,
that has always been there.
People are under the assumption that taking the land is all about agriculture and farming.
It's not all about agriculture, it's about properties. And nobody had said it's all about agriculture. It's about properties. It is about agriculture largely. Maybe 80% of it is about agriculture. It speaks to the food security.
Can you clarify the issue of constitutional change? I hear the issue about farmers and women. That's fine, right? And I think everybody would want that, including young people who must go into farming. That doesn't need any of this debate, right? And it can happen now with the Department of Agriculture, that's the Department of Land. But for now, just quickly clarify, right? Why is it that the president says to the Afrikaners the constitution won't change? Why would she say that?
Well, I would not account for president because I was not there when he addressed, but the fact that he addressed, because amongst other things, the problem is what he said, and the other problem is that he in fact addressed the Afrikaners, of which other presidents have addressed the Afrikaners. But what becomes then the problem that the people are speaking about is what he said. But from where I'm seated, I don't think that we are not willing to change the constitution as the African National Congress Youth League and as the African National Congress. He was probably speaking not on the mandate of the ANC or the ANC Youth League.
Out of 10.
And if he said it, because it is not even something that myself I am privy to. It's not even something that myself I am privy to. But
you seem to be in a good position where it looks like the ANC is agreeing with you.
Not necessarily.
And looks like the constitutional process will emerge as the DA and the ANC going into some kind of a coalition on the land issue. Do you anticipate something like that? I mean, has the EFF irritated you on the land issue, especially after they want to chuck out your mayor in PE based on the fact that you didn't vote with them in parliament?
I think one of the things that we can say is this, is that we have been consistent in our stance. The ANC voted to support the panel to be set up for the discussion around the land issue to take place, but came back after the conference with the same view that the DA had. So even now you can see there's a miscommunication in the message. The president says something, the ANC says something. So the message is different either way. However, I think what we need to understand when we discuss land is this, is that it is an emotional issue. It is about dispossession of people whose land was taken from them. And in fact, when we look at the policy that government has been implementing right now, it is not meeting those people on the ground.
Do you think
and we have to understand land between urban land and rural land, because there's two different issues here. What about the black farmers where the ANC leases farms to black farmers to farm?
ANC?
The ANC. What about those farms?
Wait, but I want you to just address the issue of redress, right? Do you think your stance will endear you to the black voters that you need so much to govern, right? Because they're getting a sense that you are sort of half-hearted about giving them back their land. The land was stolen from them. We've established that, right? We are trying to create a process where the land is given back. Can you simplify for me how the DA addresses the question of redress in its policy on land?
What we're saying as the DA is that we believe in redress. We believe that land must be given back to those that the land was taken from. And the matters, the matters, for free. The matters that I'm talking about, the matters that I'm talking about are simple. Is to say this, is that when you give people title deeds, you give them the ability to own their own property. Here we're talking about actual examples of how we want to start.
But you don't want to touch the ones who have owned the land for all the years, and maybe there was an over allocation to them.
You see, not at all. Not at all.
There's a reason why
not at all. Being able to give back land is not about when we're talking about land. It's not about white people, black people only. We have to look at the context. We have to look at where do we take to give back, because the land must go back.
Just give me your parting shot quickly.
I mean, I'm not surprised that Ramaphosa and DA, they are same in the WhatsApp group, right? Look. They represent the anchors, the principles of the economy, right? They represent the minority white supremacists in this country. So therefore, it is difficult for them to say, we will take the land without compensation and agree. It's not like they don't agree, they do. But because of where they find themselves.
Last word, you've got the last word.
The African National Congress is going to expropriate land without compensation, keep it in the state, and give it to the people based on the need.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much for I hope the debate continues, and hopefully you guys will be part of shaping a new future. That was Frankly Speaking tonight, commemorating the heroic deeds of the youth of 76 along with the youth leaders of our day. Until we speak frankly again, may God bless you.